Obviously not, but here we are recording. So we're in the studio, Wisconsin BHA report. This is Bill Kepke with Skye Goode. Skye, hello.
Hello.
Let me get the camera on you. There we go. There it is. This fun thing out of the way. Bam. Skye, thanks for joining me today.
Yep, no problem.
So this is, we're in Stevens Point. We made the rounds. We got coffee. We stopped at Fall Line. Thanks for doing that. It was fun.
Yep.
This is the first episode in a series we want to put together centered around Wisconsin public lands, dryland trapping, and upland bird hunting. So from my experience, I do a little bit of trapping, a little bit of upland hunting. There's not a lot of communication that happens between those two user groups of the outdoor space. And there's a lot of, I guess, myths and kind of emotions and stigmas, exactly. So I want to get this conversation going here through the platform of BHA. Today we're going to be talking about trapping, because that's obviously your forte.
Trapping and public lands. Not
trapping and
I don't
public
do much
lands.
with upland dogs.
There you go. So we got more people for that. So I'm excited to get it rolling. Just like I said, from my experience, I go to NAVDA days or just upland dog things, and people talk about traps. They're worried about traps. They don't understand them. They the thought is, I'll just pull the dog out, which is not how you want to go about removing something from a trap. And then we're seeing more and more states kind of losing trapping on public land. And my hope is that having these conversations going forward, we can help stop that potentially and keep trapping going, keeping public land open for that I don't know, what do you call it? Tradition, activity, skill set, living.
Yep, necessity, all of it. I'm not too worried about it ever going away on our public land, but it could become more restrictive, which would be worrisome for efficiency. So yeah, it's an important conversation. And I get it. It's totally legit to worry about your dog anywhere, whether you're in the city or the marsh, public, private. So it's warranted.
Yeah. So here we are. First episode with Skye. Skye, we'll start. What are our, I guess, do you want to start with traps or do you want to start with seasons?
Either way. I guess if it's upland dog, we're just in the fall, right?
Yep.
So we can kind of get into trapping there's three reasons for trapping. There's the consumptive, which is the meat and fur. Then there's the nuisance control, and then there's the research. So really, nuisance can be any time of year, and research is very pocketed to where you're at. And so it's mostly the consumptive trapper that would interact with upland bird hunters, I would assume.
For sure. I would agree.
Yeah.
And we had been talking before we recorded about kind of like the interactions each of us have. So like I'm a little bit in both worlds, and I see the miscommunication. I know you had mentioned like if a trap goes missing off public land, a lot of the times it's a bird hunter because we're operating in the same space, and someone they see that trap, like you said, they're rightfully worried about their dog, and so they grab it and take it, do whatever with it. So we want to hopefully avoid that because stealing traps off public land is illegal.
But also the full circle if you love your game birds, the predators that raid the game bird nests, and you're not going to have these animals. Like we all have to kind of have the collective goal of the habitat balance, or neither of us will get it.
Correct. Agreed. Thinking of all the raccoons that hit up my bear bait last year are also in a really good grouse hole. So taking a few of them out of there will help. All right, so I've got Wisconsin trapping regs up here on the screen. If you're just listening, you'll have to go and watch the video or look at the trapping regulations on your own. Yeah, we've got those going on. So when are trapping seasons, Skye? Do we know that off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's always, I believe, the third Saturday in October. So, like, last year it was October 19th. It might be, like, October 17th this year. But it's in the fall, mid-October. And it does run until mid-February. Some of them close early, like Fisher is done pretty much the end of the year. Bobcat seasons are split. So, I mean, our regulations are probably, I don't know how many, like 40 pages long because trapping regs are pretty extensive. So it's hard to kind of sum it all up like, gun season runs these 9 days. Depending on where you're at and what you're after, there's different dates. But for the most part, it runs October to February.
Sounds good. And for this specifically, we're gonna try to stick with the dry land traps for everyone listening. So the ones that you would encounter more than not in the field. And so it's good to know those season dates, so you kind of know when stuff could be laid out, when people could have their trap lines out. So.
And in Wisconsin, we don't have to have any kind of signage that says there are traps in the area. If it's public lands that are open to hunting, you can assume that it's also open to trapping. So you should just assume, you should know the start date for trapping and just assume there are trappers in the area. Like some places might specifically say no trapping, but there would be big signs. Otherwise, if it's a hunting, public grounds, it's also open to trapping. So
definitely good to know. So let's dive into traps. So before the show we talked cable restraints, body grip, and footholds. I guess where do you want to start?
We can start anywhere. I have a lot of experience with dogs personally in cables and footholds. I've personally never had an interaction with dogs in body grip, but as a trap red instructor, I can speak to how it happens, why, and how to release. So my personal anecdotes would be from the other two, so we can start wherever.
So perfect. I've got on the screen, we'll start with cable restraints. Right there, second one. So a cable noose used for restraining fur-bearing animals which does not allow the device or trapped animal to reach unfrozen water. So these are not to be confused with snares.
Yep. Yeah, so the average trapper probably won't say cable restraint. We put out a bunch of snares for coyotes. That is just for, it's a mouthful to say relaxing lock, cable restraint, or cable, but this is essentially a snare that is not locking and not lethal. So it's no different than the chain, like they call it a choke chain for the dog.
A slip lead.
A slip lead, yeah. So it's exactly like that. It's a relaxing lock. It has a cable that you can see in the regs. It says they cannot reach water. But then it also goes into no entanglement, which means no trees, so the animal can't wrap around and choke itself, which is what the states that have lethal snaring, that's their purpose. So really ours is, you could say it's like a slip lead for wild canines.
It is. And I think it was at the Trapper's Ed course we were talking about. So wild animals won't walk backwards.
No.
Like you can train, most dogs to walk backwards, but yeah, they won't. So they'll just keep going in circles, or they'll try to get away and it'll tighten, and then they relax, and then the cable restraint relaxes. So with this, I guess for most people, it's not going to be right. There shouldn't be any panic on.
No, no, not at all. And the average domestic dog, they know. A wild canine has never had that around their neck, so they might, I don't want to say freak out, because usually when I come up on them, they're sleeping or they're relaxed. But when our dogs get caught in these, and my dog Marbles gets caught constantly, and in fact, when I'm setting cable restraints at the beginning of the season, I always have them test out a few so that I can get the right height, because it's like been a year and kind of get rusty. When they hit that cable and their head goes through the loop, they just sit down. Like it doesn't there's no spring activated device to cinch it down over their neck. So a domestic dog won't fight it necessarily.
I'm thinking of a beagle. So it's a private property I have permission to deer hunt on. The neighbor lets their beagle roam, free roaming, which is adorable because I love beagles, but also frustrating during deer season when the beagle chases all the deer. But I always think if I were to coyote trap out there, that beagle would be in my sets probably just about every day.
Yep. Yeah. And when I'm trapping on private land and they do have their dogs that run free, I always give them a little education that it's not the cable restraint or the trap that I'm worried about. It's if your dog is trapped and a wolf coyote comes along with your dog restrained in their territory, that's when I'm worried about your animal.
Yeah.
So I always say I'm not worried about my equipment. It's like you said, when we get into it, how to actually remove your dog's foot, that's when the injury happens. Or we've had several incidents of trapped dogs that, in wolf country or coyote, in breeding season. And I've had a lot of fox and coyote that are killed by other coyotes, so that's when the danger happens.
Yeah,
so.
Definitely. Anything else you want to add with cable restraints?
No, I think cable restraints are fairly easy. You don't need an education on how to use them because it's just like a slip. You just take your dog, put it over their head. So there's nothing to learn about there. And this is with all the traps, but just you don't need to remove the cable or the trap from the area. If something was illegally set, you just need to call the warden and have them do it. If there's if there's ever a traffic violation, you're not out there direct. You call you call the state trooper. You don't go out there. It's the same thing with trapping. If there was something illegally set, you can remove your dog from the trap. I believe it even says in the regs that you're not supposed to touch the trap at all. But as a dog owner, I'm not going to let my dog sit there and wait 6 hours for the next available warden. That's kind of silly. So if we have the education to remove our animal, do it. That's common sense. But then do not take the device with you. Leave everything where it is. Yeah.
And we'll have, as part of this series, Ted Somers has agreed. He's going to either use one of his kids' stuffed animals or one of his dogs, and he's got access to traps over by him. So we're going to put together some videos, kind of like Traps YouTube page, but on how to remove our dogs from these traps. So yeah, it's good stuff.
And cable restraints, it's not something, a trapper isn't going to set one cable restraint. If you're in a marsh, I'm not going to go out there and set one. If I'm going out and putting in the work, there will be 3 dozen in that 40-acre parcel. So just be knowledgeable of that. If there are going to be more around, not that should be a fear-mongering thing, but that you're going to run into more. There's not just one set ever.
Yeah. Good to know. All right, what do we have after that? Want to go footholds or body grip traps?
Body grip is right above there, so
perfect. We'll take that.
That's probably the most controversial that we have.
So a steel trap designed to allow the animal's head, neck, or torso to enter the trap opening and be held by compression of the jaws when sprung.
Yep, so this is like the mouse trap, functioning like a mouse trap, but for the bigger raccoon, fisher, and then the water for beaver, otter. This is the most controversial, that when you are in the trapping regs and you go to the body grip section, it has the most regulations and a lot of words like recession and elevated, boxes and all that. So trappers are very protective of body grip rights, and you'll hear them called Conibears too. Conibear is just a brand.
It's like Kleenex.
Yeah, so it's it's a body grip track, but if we say Conibear, that's what that means. But we have a lot of restrictions to avoid interaction with with dogs. That's both hound hunters and upland, because most of the time on land when you're using these body grip traps, it's with bait. I can't, unless you're using it like on a trail for raccoons, which you use a smaller one. I mean, these are always associated with some type of scent or bait or meat, and so you can't keep out a dog if it is interested in that meal. So the Wisconsin Trappers Association has worked pretty hard to have the restrictions for, you see down there the body grip trap size, there's the different square inches. But for sake of conversation, the 330 is that 75 square inches or larger. And the 220 is what we call like the 60 inch. So a 220, 330, those are the ones that are the biggest that we use underwater for beaver and otter. And those will kill a dog if their head's in there. That's not something we can deny. So that's why a lot of ethical trappers say there's no reason to have a 220 on dry land. You can trap everything you want with a 160, which is the less than 60 square inches. And I agree. Like, there's no reason to use a 220. It goes back to the trapping rights, and that if we regulate the 220, then someday we're going to regulate the 160, and someday we're going to say no body gripping traps. So that's kind of where it goes to, and I know I'll get some feedback on that. But I agree. You know, there's no reason to use a 220 other than, you know, someone might be inherited traps from a grandpa or whatever, and that's fine. But like me personally, a 160 you can just put wherever you want because it's so small. Then why go through all the work of doing all the restrictions that the bigger traps have just to be able to use them when you can trap your fisher with a 160?
Yep.
So I'll get off my soapbox on that.
Agreed.
But yeah, those are and I think so. Ted's gonna show you how to remove an animal from those. I mean, you know, as a female, a trapper, I can get a 160 with my bare hands. I can't do the 330 though. The average person out there, it doesn't matter whether they're a trapper or whatever, I would say a 160 would be pretty tough to do barehanded. Even a 110, which is the smallest little one for muskrats. So knowing these body grip traps, knowing what tools to bring in the field to be able to open them, it should be in everyone's toolkit or game bag or whatever.
Agreed. Either I've got a smaller hand. What are they called? The squeezers.
Like grip.
I'm blanking on the word that you would use to reset a trap. Squeezing the springs.
Yeah. What are those called?
What are they called? It's a hand. Anyways, we'll dive into it more with Ted. But I've got a smaller set of that in my bag where I can carry the water and everything. And then
it's just a setter. It's a body grip
yes,
setter,
thank
right?
You,
yeah.
Thank you. Just the setting tongs. I carry one of those, and then I've got a bigger one that I use for actual trapping. And then Ted actually has a pretty slick way he can use his lead.
Yep. I would say any kind of rope, like a 7-foot rope, just having it paracord, whatever. Strong rope.
So we're gonna go through that with him, and that'll be good for everyone. Because you can use just your dog lead to apply the necessary pressure. It's just realizing, just like if your dog gets in the porcupines or something, like they're gonna be freaking out, you're gonna be freaking out. Energy's high, but it's a good skill to be aware of, to be educated on, because it's. Did you quote me numbers on how often it happens?
Not very often. We go over all law enforcement interaction with domestics at our spring Trapper Ed meeting. And this year there were none. And the year before it was like one. And that was an illegally set 330 on dry land. So if we're going to talk illegal sets, there's no way to prevent it. If people are going to do illegal stuff, well, then we can't, no matter how long our regs are. But it's not very often. But it's better to be prepared and not need it.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked about recessed traps on here. Can you dive into that a little bit? What does that look like?
So to come across, we'll just say a fisher set, for example. If you're out in the field, to come across, it would probably be either a plastic square bucket or a wooden box. And you go through the regs, but the certain sizes need to be recessed a number of inches. And that was just determined by the shoulder height. 7-inch recess for a 50 square inches, or an opening of 8 inches high by 10 with a 10-inch recess for the enclosed. So, it's very kind of going through each of them depending on what you're doing. And that's for baited scented. So, you would come across either a plastic bucket, or people can make natural cubbies too, but it's not, fish are notorious for jumping on top of the box and destroying it. So most people don't make a natural cubby, but like a hollow log or whatever. As long as it meets the requirements, though, it's considered an enclosure, if it has all those openings and recessions. So that's what you would see. I would assume that, the dog isn't just going to run right in there unless you haven't fed it for a while. But you would have some time. So if you see that cubby box, that's, your time to prep, get away. Because there's probably, again, there's not just going to be the one. But then you also have the elevated. So at least 5 feet above the surface doesn't need any of that restriction. So you might see traps up, with bait that might be covered by, as long as the bait can't be seen from above, it's legal. And fishers climb trees and gray fox and all that. So those would be kind of the two ways that the upland bird hunters would see conibears because the rest, beaver, otter, they're underwater. So you don't really need to worry about that.
I like it.
You know, the purpose of the body grip trap is to separate the brain stem from the spinal cord. You know, so right behind the head is the target on that. A lot of times dogs will paw at something, you know, to dig it out. And that's, I guess, a blessing in this case, because if your dog's paw is in there, at least, you know, it'll survive. But the dogs at large, if they were to get, I mean, it would be fatal. So yeah, I'm glad that he's going to show the lead trick, because that's most people aren't walking around with 330 setters in their pocket. Like, you're already carrying enough stuff. So knowing how to do it with your leash is going to be important.
Super. Yeah, he mentioned it at grouse camp back in 2019, and I know there was some people that were confused about it, which is kind of what spurred the idea for this now. And then my friend Liz out in Wyoming with BHA, they put together a series, which is what I'm basing this off of, because out there, Wyoming, there's not nearly as many trapping regulations, so they can have 220s above ground, you know, without cubbies or anything like that, I believe. So don't quote me on that. But there's far less restrictions out there, and I know a lot of people head out west, so I think if we can base this off Wisconsin, give people a little bit more education, so when they, you know, they're hunting here or out west, we're all a little bit more educated on what to expect.
Yeah, I think our trapping regs are perfect, honestly. You know, the entanglement with cable restraints is tough because, like I said, you know, a domestic dog isn't going to work the cable, so they're not going to get tangled up, but I see the reason for it. But other than that, like, our regulations are as middle ground as you can get, where trappers can be successful. You can catch every animal you need to with the tools that are legal, and everyone's safe, you know, and there's, I don't know, I think that every state should model off of it because it's pretty much perfect for a activity that can have so many different variables. And we have, I don't know how many fur bearers we have, like 32 different fur bearers. So, and then we have all these activities like bird hunting, hound hunting, bear hunting, deer, small game, you know, we have everything here. So I think they're pretty much perfect. So those states that are having issues with public land trapping, New Mexico, I mean, they're about to lose how many thousands of acres of, you know, or maybe they did lose it. I guess I haven't looked lately, but just adding these restrictions would really help. Our cable restraint, for example, there's some suburbs out in Los Angeles that have bad problems with coyotes coming into backyards, killing pets. They adopted our cable restraint restrictions and everything that we have, and they're going to use, their trappers are using, they've banned trapping in the state, but they've hired government trappers to come in to trap the coyotes using cable restraints based off of our regs.
Sweet.
You know, so if like everyone kind of got on board with that, we would kind of all, in a perfect world, we would all be happy.
We would be. Less pets getting attacked by coyotes is always good.
And the other thing to remember with these traps is we're trapping wild animals. These aren't going to be painted fluorescent orange. They are going to be hidden. Like this winter, for example, I was showing my boys we're in a frozen waterway where a weasel would go. And I said, well, you should put a weasel trap here. And the grass was over a little path. Put my hand in and I felt the metal, and there was a 110 for mink right in there. I didn't set it off, but my hand was literally in the middle of that square, just not touching the trigger. Yeah. And I was like, oh, someone's already trapping here. We're going to leave. But even as a trapper, I didn't see that trap, you know? So I always hear about guys like walking and getting their foot in the traps because they're going through a trail. Again, like you're wearing boots or whatever, it's not going to hurt anything. But just know that you're not just going to see them blatantly. Like, it's going to be a surprise, like you said, a shock factor. And like your dog, no matter what trap, even a cable restraint, your dog's probably going to whine, whimper. It's a sound you're not used to, and that can really throw people into panic. So the more you're prepared, just knowing that's going to happen, the better. You know?
Agreed. So we've got body grips. What else? Anything else you want to cover with body grips? Don't panic. We'll go through releasing. Yeah. I think once you see all the releasing and see, like, I think the fear about traps is not knowing how they work. And a cable restraint is a no-brainer. There's no... A body grip, you look at that, though, if you're not a trapper, that looks very confusing. That looks as confusing as the microphones here. So so once you have the knowledge of how these traps work, you know, what part fires the trap, what the safeties do, how to compress it, once you learn all that,
I think your fear and anxiety is going to be way less.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed. Cool. All right. Footholds. Where is that on the list? Cable restraints. Foot activated cable restraints.
Yeah, that's not a common one. They legalized it a couple years ago for bear trapping, like in hopes to someday have bear trapping, but nobody uses those. They're very expensive.
Bear trapping would be wild.
Yeah.
Colony traps, possession. Did I go past it?
Yeah, you might
I
have.
must have. Foothold. Where are you? Where is it?
They might not have a section. Trap size and placement probably has.
Oh, I passed it.
Trap size placement. So, yeah, they talk about the jaw spread of 5.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Jawed trap.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right, so we'll go back up to definitions. Got a
So they call it a jawed trap in this.
enclosed trigger. Nope. So jawed trap. A trap designed to catch an animal by the foot, but does not include enclosed trigger traps, cable restraints, or body gripping traps.
So an enclosed trigger trap is we call it a DP, or dog proof. So those cone-shaped ones that we use for raccoon trapping, that's what an enclosed trigger trap is.
Yep. Those are nice. Big fan of those. All right. Jawed traps. Are we going to find it here? Well, you can go on. Jawed traps. What else do people need to know?
Well, whatever you've seen on the cartoons are not legal and not used. So there are no teeth on the jaws of the trap. We don't use big bear traps, like those are novelty things. And foothold traps are buried underground. I mean, the essence of a foothold trap, we used to call them leg hold traps, and it was a easier roll off the tongue, but then we noticed, wait a minute, when you say leg hold, it implies that we're holding an animal up by their shoulder, and that's when you get all the myths of chewing their legs off and whatever. So we said, wait, it's a foothold trap. It holds them by the paw. So that's why we've changed it. And the regs call it a jawed trap. But these are, the purpose of them is to using bait or scent or whatever to trick that animal to step on that little 2-inch pan. So these are buried underground. So you're not going to be able to see the trap itself. You can see a cable restraint, you can see a body grip trap, and a dog-proof enclosed trigger. You can't see the foothold. So those will be underground. And, a trap that is set for a fox or a coyote or bobcat is not dog-proof because they are, it's all the same animal. So there is no way to avoid having your dog step in a foothold if it wants to.
What's a good example? You got any videos off the top of your head? The regs don't... this one?
Like of just the trap, that coyote snow set on the ice shows me making a set in the snow.
Oh boy. Skip ad.
I do plan to do a wolf specific one because of the upcoming wolf season, but...
Oh, that'll be sweet.
Yeah.
So those listening, right now we're watching a video of Skye set a coyote snow set on the ice.
So that's what the regs call a jawed trap. We call it a foothold trap.
I'll mute this.
So these start like the start of trapping season, mid-October, and you can run them through February 15th. So we run them in dirt, snow, it doesn't matter. This is the most popular, most efficient, most common trap. I've had a lot of experience with my traps either getting stolen or just catching dogs. So, I'm a trapper. I can tell you a bird dog from a lab from a coonhound track for the most part, you just sort of read the sign and you see, well, this was, sometimes I check at 4 a.m. If I'm on public land during the early season, I check twice. I check in the morning, I check at night. If something happens during the day, then I know it was most likely like a bird. Yep. If it happens at night, it's probably a coonhound, So that's how I can kind of weed that out. all these animals, like when bird hunters are after birds, their main predator, like we're all going to be interacting because coyotes and fox are after the same thing you are. So there's no way to avoid it. You can't say, well, stay out of the bird hunters area, and bird hunters can't say, stay out of the trapping areas. Like that, you go where the sign is and where the game is, and bobcats are after bunnies and fox are after birds. So there's really no way to avoid each other. But there are some ways to, I guess, kind of, again, the education is the only thing we're going to do. So once your dog gets caught, then what is kind of the most important piece, I think.
Yeah, definitely. What are some features of the trap where you don't, because that's one of the myths, right? You hear is, oh my God, the animal chews its foot off, or it's going to break its leg. You're going to hear that a lot. That's especially from dog owners that aren't outside at all. The traps are going to break their legs. They're going to chew their foot off. Why are those not true?
Well, and I have a lot of videos. One of the wolves I caught this last year, as soon as I released it, I reset the same trap and put my hand in it, because I have a lot of the hand in trap videos, and people said, well, that's not the trap you actually use. So then I thought, well, fine, the next animal I catch that I have to release, I'm going to reset the trap just to show you these are all the same. Back in the day, like early, before 1970s, we used what I call hardware store traps. So they were traps that had no modifications at all, because it was about getting the fur. We didn't care about, being humane, and we didn't really interact with others on the trap line. So I'm not going to deny that I would not ever put my hand in a trap from back then. So some of the modifications that are very important that I harp on for every trap red student that comes through my class is having offset traps. So that is when the jaws, they don't close all the way. They don't touch. There's a nice big gap, usually like a ½ inch or so, depending on the size, between the jaws. So back when you had closed traps, it completely would shut on the animal's foot. Their foot would fall asleep. They couldn't feel it, just like when you sit on your leg for a day and you can't feel your leg. Like, it would close, it would cut the circulation off. They would be chewing at the trap or whatever, and they would chew themselves because they have no feeling. Oof. So it's not a myth that back then they would chew their feet. You would not see chew marks above the trap, though, because an animal's not going to intentionally harm themselves. They didn't know their foot was down there. So we come up with offset traps. This keeps the circulation going the whole time. An animal's not going to harm itself when it can feel itself. So there is no chewing or that happens when we have these offset traps. So that's one of the biggest things. Also, trapping in the winter, if we cut circulation off, these animals, like a bobcat, for example, I have to release them. It wouldn't be able to hunt. It wouldn't survive if its paw was frostbit, if it didn't have blood flow. So the offset is really important. And then the laminations. So the laminations is an extra piece of metal that's welded on the jaws to increase the surface area. So if we just use regular non-laminated traps, they're very sharp, and they would break skin and cut into the animal's paw, cause an infection. You would have a lot of injuries that way. These are, by increasing the surface area, everything's rounded and smoothed off. So it's just just more on. Instead of like grabbing just your finger, it's like grabbing your whole hand, So those are two of the most important modifications that we now have. So those myths were true at one point, but modern day trapping doesn't have that anymore. And that's kind of the frustrating thing, is trying to change that. And I don't know, again, it's just through education that we get that. But the injuries to dogs that I've seen personally, my first year trapping, I was up in Barron County, and a neighbor, I let a neighbor know I was trapping coyotes. It was quite a ways away from their house, but I noticed that their dogs would run at large. They had a big St. Bernard, right? And he was laying on the porch. Oh, he never leaves the porch. That's one of those. And I'm like, and I was like 2 miles down the road trapping. So I'm like, all right. Next day, I come check my traps, and there's this giant St. Bernard just sitting there wagging his tail, right? And his foot's in there. And I was like, oh, his whole paw took up my trap. But He was fine. Like, he was wagging his tail, and, of course, no blood, no broken skin, nothing. But the landowner came down at, like, the same moment, because the dog started barking when I came to help him. Landowner comes driving down really fast, gets out of his truck, starts screaming at me. He goes up to his St. Bernard and he rips that paw out of the trap.
No.
The dog starts freaking out. There's blood. He hurt it so bad.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my eye-opener that, oh my gosh, this is why injuries happen. Like, people don't know. He didn't know that you just, and you'll probably see in the videos, you put the levers down to open it up, and his paw comes right out.
Yep.
And so that was my first experience that not everybody knows how a trap works.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, your first, like, don't do this with footholds, is don't rip the paw out, because that's when the injury will occur.
Yes.
Another thing that's kind of common is you might see some blood because a tooth or a gum.
Yeah.
So a dog or a coyote or whatever will sometimes chew at the trap and hurt a tooth or pinch their tongue or whatever in the chewing, just like, some dogs chew on their kennel. So when you see blood, don't assume that it's an injury from the foot or whatever. Like, kind of assess the situation. And but the body grip is more time sensitive. Like, a foothold trap they're okay. Like, nothing's gonna happen. So yeah, that was my first encounter with dogs and traps. But
Yikes.
There's a lot of them. Like, my cat Henry, I caught him in a coyote trap. He was a feral kitten. And I caught him, and he, I let him go, released him, and he followed me back to the truck, and then and he's like 8 years old now.
Yeah, best buds now.
Yeah, yep.
That's right there that's stuff like that why we're here doing this and helping people get that information out there, and I hope this goes to other, people that just aren't hunting. Obviously, St. Bernard, nobody was hunting with that dog, but that's going to happen elsewhere. So getting that information out there.
Yeah, 2 years ago I had it was like $500. I do a police report. It was like $500 worth of equipment. So that's like 12 traps or so stolen.
Jesus.
That was from coon hunters, but it was still there. I could see, it was in the sand. So the story was as if it was recorded on video. Like, I could see their dogs got caught in the traps. They pulled them all up. They cut them with cable cutters and whatever they could do, and they stole all of them. And it was all gone. And I put myself, I usually try to, empathize. And so I put myself in that person's, they're out hunting. Their dog gets caught. Maybe they just release them, and then the dog goes over and gets caught in another one. Because, again, there's not just one trap set. Yeah. I can imagine the frustration, but again, in that, so that's going to happen, but you got to just, leave the traps there. Like, it's stealing. You can't be retaliating in that way. If you feel something was illegally set, you call your warden out. Legally, all traps have to have the DNR customer number or the name, address, phone number. I put my cell on there because if there's ever an issue, I want the person to call me so I can mediate it, So yeah, and then last year I had bird hunters. They only took one. I think they only found one. There was only the one set off. I had 6 or 7, but same thing. They took it away, and I never found it, never recovered it. But it was on the very opening day too. But then I have good stories I have a place that I coyote trap where the beavers have dammed it up, so now it's duck habitat. Yeah. The duck hunters love it or whatever, and they're just great. Every morning I go check traps about the same time they're putting all their decoys out, and they wave to me, and I go over, and they have their dogs, and they're 50 yards from where I'm trapping, but their dogs are focused on whatever they're doing, and I'm not over there, and we kind of, trappers also have that responsibility of, if this is, a pocket where grouse hunters, woodcock, whatever, by a trailhead, for example, that coyote that you're targeting doesn't just live at that parking spot. They go trap somewhere else. Trappers, I think, have more responsibility because you're setting the traps. These animals roam willy-nilly. Be a good trapper and find somewhere that there isn't maybe as much rabbit sign or bird sign, or it's not right next to the parking lot. If you see a bobcat track in the trailhead, follow it. You don't need to put your trap right there. So a lot of it is on the trappers, I think, have the greater responsibility. But my one plea to the bird hunters is just don't steal the stuff. Yeah. Go ahead, call the warden. I would be fine with sheriff coming out and, but just don't steal, because it's very expensive. This video, you're looking at a $25 trap, and with the drag and everything, you're looking at $40 worth of equipment in one set. And so if I'm putting out a couple dozen, that's a lot, you know? So that's kind of my one little spiel on that. But like I said, there's no way to avoid it. We're all kind of interacting in the same land.
Yeah.
So we do have some restrictions like cable restraints. We don't, up until now, I mean, we could only put them out starting December 1st, and that was to minimize the interaction with bird hunters. But they found that there are not many bird dogs. Like, again, the cable restraint is so harmless that there's no reason to restrict it. Mm-hmm. So they're passing through from the spring hearings to open it up in October. We might not see that for a couple of years. You know how long it takes, but they kind of ease into it and found that there aren't any issues with it. So
I like it. Well, those are the main 3 traps, right? People are going to be running into on public land. I think we wrapped up with some good concluding thoughts there. Is there anything else you want to finish with?
No, I mean, you're in the media, you're going to hear the really sad stories. And those are the ones that are going to stick with you. There's a lot. I think maybe Wyoming is a state that has an organization that was created by someone who lost a dog, I think. One of those states. And I get it. Like, if I lost a dog, I would be, whatever the means were, I would be very, revenge seeking. But just remember that if there is a 330 on dry land, again, that's illegal activity. Trappers aren't, ethical trappers don't condone that, but there's no way to avoid the illegal activity. Mm-hmm. I had to beaver trap for someone that the beavers were flooding their land. He couldn't even access it. They flooded it so bad. And he had me come check out. And when I was out there, the neighbor also had beaver problems. And I didn't know who the neighbor was, but he said, can you go out there too and assess what's going on? So I go out there, and the water had receded because we were in the drought. And I noticed, and there's a trap set right like where the water level was, and it's still set. And it was the hardware special, right? Like the $4 trap that is just awful with chain that looks like a bread twist tie. And it's literally wrapped around like a dead log. It's not even fastened. It's just like wrapped twice, and it's still set. Ugh. And I was like, what? No tag on it, nothing. So I set it off, and I unraveled it, and I was going to take it. And then I look, and there was another one and another one. And I look, and it's like landmines. This landowner had set all these beaver traps, or what? I mean, they're not beaver traps, but he set them for the beaver on his own volition, doing 100 different things illegally. Mm-hmm. And I know it was just a lack of education, but if I had my dog out there and we were scouting for beaver sign, he would have gotten caught in all of these. And that has nothing to do with the trapping regs, trapping seasons, whatever, or the trap, it's like the illegal activities. So that's kind of I'm hoping the more education we can get out there, like all these videos I'm doing and you doing this kind of thing, the more people know about it, then, we can kind of prevent some of those catastrophes. Agreed.
And hopefully get some more business for actual trappers.
Mm-hmm.
You get the education out there and people are like, well, we'll just call in someone who actually knows what they're doing, have them come out. So keep trapping going. Because, that would be, that's no good.
And you like trapping. Yep. Like, it's something to do when you can't bird hunt, know, and you get, pigeons and possums and all kinds of cool calls. So, I mean, bird hunters might love trapping. Mm-hmm. And, so don't kind of knock it maybe from a bad experience. Like, embrace it. If you're going to learn how to use all these traps, maybe you want to go for a bobcat or go for that wolf in November or whatever.
And I don't want to give away all the strategies, but winter trapping is where I've found some really good grouse holes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I bring the dog with. He's just like you train him to do any kind of aversion to porcupines or snakes or anything like that. Like, he knows not to go by the traps. I don't use footholds mostly because I'm too lazy. They're a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
It's so much work.
Yep.
Dog proofs, cubbies, underwater. I do all that. Yeah. He knows not to go by that stuff. But you can. It's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy being out there all year round, and the dog likes it. You do need a dog that's cold weather.
Yeah.
Like they can't be if they're fair weather bird dogs, they're not going to enjoy trapping. But like Django, he's bobbing for ice in February. We're open water trapping, and I hear a splash, and he's over here getting ice chunks out of the beaver pond.
Yeah.
Shaking my head at him. But it's for bird dog hunters out there, just things to be aware of. more understanding. I know I've got a list of people who are excited to come on for the future episodes and learn from like Ted. Watch your video, so really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, and the Trapper Education course is $12.
Yes.
And I mean, you took the test out. There's a lot of different ways, but if you want to do the hands-on, you'll get to set with instructors all these traps we talk about. You'll actually set them and know how they work. Again, $12. You'll get your trapping license certification, but the knowledge you get, like I would,
it's huge. The knowledge from that. Yeah, I did the test out version. Even that was. I mean, I lucked out. It was you, Jim, Mike, Curtis was there.
You had quite a.
Being the only one there was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I got an education that day. But yeah, I highly recommend that for upland hunters. What else you got going? You got the women's trapping event coming up?
Yep, we're having a first annual women's 3-day trap camp in September. End of September, the 24th or 26th. We only had 30 spots. I posted it 2 days ago. We have 18 filled. I thought we were going to have to work really hard to get I'm like, no. It's over halfway full.
Yeah,
so
after 3 days.
And it's the full gamut of like setting traps, skinning the animal, cooking the meat over the campfire. I mean, we'll have tan pelts already there. We're not going to do the tanning, but then sewing them into hats. It is the full spectrum of trapping.
It's going to be awesome. And that's out at Suez here in the Point area, so Central Wisconsin Environmental Center. It's a pretty awesome location. I'm super jealous. I would sign up. I still might.
Yeah. Well, we're allowing you to come to help set up and clean up. That's about it. But it's all female instructors. Just to trapping is a male-dominated field in that I can't talk about beaver without being sexualized. That's just how the field is. And so we joke about we're so excited to be able to talk about things at this trap camp that is going like it's just a safe, comfortable environment.
Yep. There's that's another thing, right? Like I post something about that and a bunch of angry white dudes responded that the outdoor space is not male focused or male centered. And it's like, we'll talk to any woman that's been in the outdoors, and they'll have a story that refutes your position. So it's cool that it's happening. There's going to be a lot of great people, a lot of great female leaders there. I know Jenna's going to come on another episode of this in the future, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, she's pretty much leading it up. Her and Jody Hamerla, like they're doing all the planning and all the work behind the scenes. So
it's awesome. And I know we plugged it in the BHA group, and we're gonna. Now that I know there's only 12 spots left, I probably don't need to do a.
That was this
post.
morning, so I don't even know.
Yeah. So that's awesome. You got a lot of good stuff going on. Do you have a release date of when you're gonna open up your fur hats to us regular folk?
I don't know. I try to sew whenever I can, but like right now I'm remodeling my bathroom and doing my landscaping, so I'm like, I don't know. I am closed for this year though, just trying to get caught up. But the teach a man to fish and he'll feed himself. Like that's why I'm excited to teach at this women's camp how to sew fur, and I'd rather teach people than just keep taking it all. So
I like that.
So maybe there'll be something separate down the road.
You'll have a mentor that learns from you and does
apprentice.
Yeah. So if you want to be super envious of fur gear, check out Skye's Barefoot Furs.
Yep.
The quality. So as someone who I've got 2 of your hats, a beaver and a raccoon. They're amazing hats. I got my dad a hat for his birthday last year. He loves it, so appreciate what you do there. It's awesome quality. And you're selling all that stuff right now, or are they all sold too? Like everything you're making is already pre-sold?
Yeah, everything I'm making this year is custom order, so I don't have an inventory. And that was kind of why I closed orders, is I want to have an inventory to like put real fur in people's hands, but I never had time to sew it because I was always doing other people's orders. So, but that's kind of like one of the most important things to me is using the fur we trap. Like I could write like a little book of like, so now you trapped a fox, now what? Like you need to have like a purpose for trapping. It can't just be to catch the animal. Like what do we do next? So yeah, that'll be in the future.
I love it. There's definitely a return to that. I was on the Mark Dweck's podcast, Living the Outdoors, and that was what I was talking about. Like that's been my journey in the outdoor space. Is not more gear, more of the the gear thing that's happening in the outdoor space, but like learning how to tan my own deer hides using the brain tanning method, which has been pretty sweet. Learning more stuff with furs from you, and now you're forcing me to do more because you're not making hats anymore. So I appreciate that. You're like, no, Bill, go out and do it yourself. So.
Well, I think it really helps with regulated ethical trapping because, if you didn't have to ever process a deer on your own, you would probably shoot a whole bunch of does back in the swamp, right? But when you have to drag that doe, you're like, I'll just... I'm good.
One or two is good.
But it's the same with trapping. Like I let a lot of young raccoons go, or a fox that maybe has kind of a mangy tail. It's not just out to kill because I'm looking at it like I don't want to skin that because I don't want the fur. I don't want to use it or whatever reason. So I let a lot. So I think the more that people trap and then use, they need to skin it. They need to, like you said, tan it. The whole process, you're more selective. And so it just is better ethically, I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
Do you, now that we're on to that, do you ever have, like you mentioned letting young raccoons go? Because trapping, right, you get up and close with these animals, right? Like I've talked to so many guys who are like, oh, shoot a coyote, save a fawn, like that whole thing. To each his own in the outdoor space, but as someone who's, trapped and we've been up and close with these animals, like you definitely take on a different kind of philosophy when it comes to the lives of these animals. What does that look for you?
Well, like right now the wolf is the controversy out there, and it's unfortunately like you have two ends of the spectrum. Either save all the wolves, don't ever have a season on them, or you have the shoot 'em all, smoke a pack a day SSS guys. And I just... like, it just bothers me. I don't care if they're a trapper, instructor, whatever. If you're saying kill them all, like you're no better than save them all. Like, we got to have that common ground. But I'm also to the point of, to me, like with how many wolves are in, again, maybe I'm just in my own bubble. But like I said, I hold like a gray fox is very important to me because I don't see, like I really am worried about the gray fox population. But yet, like, you don't hear anybody say, like, we need to regulate gray fox. Gray fox are no bag limits, no, if you're a landowner, no license, no season, whatever you want. And it's like, and here we're all arguing about wolves, and we have other animals that are actually, like, in danger, like trouble, But no, I think one of the things I love about Wisconsin is we have nearly every fur bearer. We even have, marten are protected, but we still have them here, and we have badger, and we have all these fur bearers. Like, we got to kind of keep them all held at a good balance. So I love wolves. I want them to be around. Every time I'm, like, up at close, I get within inches of a snarling wolf every time I let them go. It's a powerful presence, but to me, it's just a big coyote. So I'm more scared of a bobcat and a badger than I am wolves and whatever else.
Bobcats are terrifying. Which is your favorite wolf video?
Oh,
do we have
my
permission
goodness.
to play it on here?
Oh, for sure. Any of them. There's so many. That was, the last one. I had to release that one 2 weeks before the season here in February. Yeah, it was tough. I don't know. There's no reason, though. Like, wolves are just living their wolf lives, Like, there's no reason to say kill them all.
Well, especially as hunters, I feel like we need to, we talked about earlier, trapping wasn't about ethics. It was just killing. I literally have a trapping book where they talk about the ethics of trapping on how it's a good, or poisoning.
Oh,
and that, it's an old book, but that's, like, kids were getting poisoned, livestock, pets.
Well, we have that going on in, like, isn't it northern Wisconsin where there's, like, frozen meat, like, animals are getting poisoned and stuff. And that's kind of something people don't understand about the conservation is that people are going to take overpopulation into their own hands, whether it's legal or not. So you will have people illegally killing an animal that is chasing, I don't know, their cattle or whatever. So why not, put this hunting season in place so we can regulate it and everyone's kind of happy. So I don't know. It's frustrating and very controversial, and I don't even know if we'll have the season this November. But But no, I like wolves. Again, they're just a big coyote. They're a sustainable, biodegradable, renewable resource. No different than fox fur, coyote fur. And wolf fur is beautiful for the most part. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'd really like to be able to utilize this resource. And right now, we're just kind of letting them go. So, yeah, so that's a female that I caught in it was like a culvert, like a little culvert under a driveway that I was trying to catch a fox. And I don't know what she was doing, checking out this I don't know if a rabbit ran in there or what. But she got caught, and that's on a drag, so it was very scary because she's not anchored down.
Oh, my God.
So if she knew it, she could lunge at me. But I used this release board. Now, I've gotten so much feedback on this because, we have those dog catch poles that you see.
Yep.
And this release board is perfect for me because it's small enough to fit in the bed of my truck. I don't have I'm not carrying out a big sheet of plywood. I do just sort of balance it on the back of my head, but as you can see, the animal's blind. So it doesn't know what I'm doing back there. When you're using a catch pole, it is so stressful on the animal because they can see what you're doing. You're choking them out. You're moving them around. They can see you reaching for the trap. But you see, she's pretty relaxed. She doesn't know what's going on.
It's like peekaboo right now. She's like, where'd she go?
Yeah, and you see, I just popped the trap off. Like, that's what you would do with your dog. You literally can just pop it right off. And look at it. She doesn't even know. She's like, what?
I thought we were fighting.
Yeah. But that's why I love the board. And, obviously the people listening today aren't probably going to be releasing wolves anytime soon, so you don't need the board. But it's just kind of a testament to how easy those foothold traps pop right off. That was probably a bridge or two because that's what I use. It's a typical foothold trap used for coyotes. And, yeah, you can see the trap's just laying there. And she doesn't know she's free, so she's just kind of chilling.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, they always do that. They don't know. I mean, you can see they've been in the trap for a few hours, and they don't really know what's going on. But I check before. I'm kicking snow. See, I check before work. I work at 8 a.m. I have kids. Kids are in the truck right now during this video. I got to take them to school, and a lot of times I check before, and so I need her to go so I can reset this trap and go to work. And so I'm always trying to shoo the animals off. But they always just want to hang out. But she will.
She's like, I'm tired.
Yeah, I don't remember. I might have just cut off the video or something, but she does run away. And she doesn't run. She just sort of walks out in the field and just stands there and looks at me and then walks off. But yeah,
it's so crazy. So wild. And then your kids have crazy stories to tell all their classmates.
Oh, yeah. And my kids do not, when we catch a bobcat, a wolf, it's not exciting. It's, to them, that's what all kids.
Can we go?
Yeah. It's not even an exciting thing to them because they're just so used to it. They don't realize that this is a real opportunity to be up close to these animals. But so, and this female, she was in heat. And so, yeah, I had a lot of feedback about they could see blood in the snow, and I'm like, that's not an injury. This is breeding season, so.
Wow.
Yeah, but as far as we have enough space for every fur bearer, and I just there's no reason to eradicate anything. There's no reason to let anything go rampant. There's a middle for all of it. So, but I was on the board meeting yesterday, just kind of tuning in, and it was frustrating, but I'm confident that in the future wolves will be like any other bobcat fisher season. Mm-hmm. I think. Yeah, I hope. So
sweet. Well, thanks for coming on today,
Skye,
and sharing with us and educating us all on public land use, trapping, and whatnot. And if I'm gonna post this today, but the trapping night or trapping weekend might be sold out by then. So
yeah, we'll see.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Skye.
All right, thanks.